Hello, everyone, and welcome. We have Stephen Dowd from Thompson Rivers University, who will first speak to us about facilitating social interaction to augment critical discourse. Over to you, Stephen.
So, wait, and I'll go through this quickly, but Stephen Dowd Inskast, te Cobourg, Ontario, Ray Inskast, but Kamloops is where I live. So my name is Stephen Dowd. I'm originally from Cobourg, Ontario. I'm currently residing and speaking to you from the traditional unceded territory of the Secwepemc people in beautiful Kamloops, BC. I'm grateful to be on these lands where I work, play, and interact with my community. I'm grateful my children have a teacher in their elementary school who's teaching them the history, traditions, and language of the Secwepemc people. And also, speaking to something someone said yesterday, I do believe that the land acknowledgement is important. And I do believe it can be more than lip service. And perhaps even if not to the audience, but certainly to the speaker, it forces me to reflect, certainly at least a little bit, on my own privilege. And that picture is a picture I took just on the weekend when I was putting this together from my yard. So that's kind of the view out from my house, and that's where I am today. And I feel very fortunate to be here. Yeah. So, once upon a time, I was fortunate to attend university in Montreal, and I'm grateful to living in Kamloops. But to be honest, I wish that I was in Montreal, and we were all in Montreal this week. It would be great to be all together. So, if anyone is in Montreal, please send bagels. This conference, when I first contemplated this conference sort of a year and a half ago and submitted my proposal, the project I was going to talk about was in a bit of a different place. I was optimistic that we had a platform that would solve a lot of problems. And now that I have more feedback, I'm not sure it functions as we'd hoped. So I apologize if this talk's a little bit mistitled. I believe the category at the time, for CNIE 2020 was to share a technology or platform. So I cannot promise maybe to meet the lofty goals of insights and solutions about how one facilitates social interaction to augment critical discourse. So I'll leave that. Hopefully you have some tips in that area. I was in a talk yesterday hosted by Erica Hargreave, and I voiced the belief that we need to design spaces for students to create and represent ideas, to write and interact in. And the truth is, I'm an instructional designer, and I know lots of instructional designers are here this week. When we spend a lot of time, rather than building those spaces, we spend a lot of time curating content, right? And so I think in all courses, we need to provide space and think carefully about space for student voice in as many ways as possible. And perhaps there's a better answer, but looking over the educational landscape, as we lean into the warm embrace of open pedagogy, the answer seems to be pretty much the same now as it was in 2001. And the answer really is blogs. It's not a sexy answer. And so I have that question. I have that question for you. Are blogs dead? Blogs aren't dead, but are they both the past and the future? This is just a screenshot from a blog that 10 years ago when I was doing my master's in educational technology and design, and we used blogs then. But I am curious, where do you think blogs fit within the educational landscape? And so if someone could either use their mic or put it in the chat, which I can't seem to see right now.
I'll keep an eye out for you.
I don't know what you guys are seeing.
Just invite everybody to answer Stephen's question in chat. Everybody has their chat available at the bottom of their screen. Pop that open and send in your messages.
Let's see.
It is a little different when you're sharing, Stephen.
Yeah. I've never used Zoom, actually. I've used Zoom, but not to present. I don't see.
Yeah, we're not getting any answers.
All right, okay, that's fine. We started late anyway.
We got
one. Running strong. Well, there you go. Thank you, Alicia. Thank you. Appreciate you. Blogs are running strong. I know that because I know blogs are running strong. We'll get to it, but we have a tendency to use blogs a lot in education, and I'm going to ask later about, maybe you can think about this, if blogs are something that we are using in other fields, right? So I would like to make a case for the lowly blog, right? Because they've been around for a long time and they're not the new cutting edge piece that they once were. But they do offer places for authentic authorship where students have voice and opportunity to customize and curate their own academic space. Like they're places they can make their own. They are perfect for authentic assessment. They're used for formative and summative assessment through constant dialogue with peers and instructors that become mediated spaces. They lend themselves to reflective consideration of learning implicitly and explicitly, making the learning process visible, right? In terms of open pedagogy, blogging supports values and approaches, especially through the notion if we believe that knowledge is a public good, which we do. If we believe that learning resides in communities, I mean, these blogs in open space are one of the ways that we encourage communities. If we believe that the critical pedagogy must be dialogical and interactive, this is that space where those dialogues can begin to happen, right? They check a lot of boxes, but somehow as educators and designers, we need to bring these individual containers of thought and media together to help engage the community, right? And that's our job as instructors, as designers, to help build that community, to encourage the critical discourse, to encourage the connectivity, because students in the existence of blogs obviously won't necessarily do this on their own, right? So 2 or 3 years ago, time, does the last year count? I don't know. Time is quite elusive, right? So we began a redesign at TRU of the Graduate Teaching Certificate in Online Education. Short form is EDDL, which actually stands for Educational Diploma in Distance Learning, so a bit confusing. But courses in their previous iteration, so before this redesign, they were already hosted on WordPress sites, so the content was open. The students used blogs to share their media creations and musings on various topics, so blogs existed. And it seems to be common practice. I mean, I mentioned this in education. I mentioned that, I had the same thing in 2010 when I was doing my master's. So do we, though, do them enough outside of our own courses? Do we use blogs for students in math, political science, business? Do you have examples? Like, are people working or in courses where they have, as students or as instructors, are using student blogs in other areas? Any examples? Again, I'm curious. I'm legitimately looking for answers because I don't know, because I see it all the time in education, but I don't see it other places. Helena doesn't have an example. Big assignment, introduction, health and healthcare. Jenny, is the blog assignment like a one assignment, or is it like sort of functions as a portfolio?
It's one of my colleagues, my ID colleagues worked on this, so I don't recall the details, but I know it was a recurring theme in the course where the students made posts on the themes or concepts they were learning and connecting it to their kind of everyday life throughout the semester.
7 minutes. Okay. I will keep moving because Barbara says I have 7 minutes left. Media focused women's and gender studies course. Yeah. Okay. So I'm glad to hear that they're still being used across. This is something. So can you see this quotation that's up? Yes.
Yes.
So online learning has been criticized as deficient in providing the social interaction needed for construction of knowledge in complex learning domains. This is a quotation I included in my proposal a year and a half ago. And I think it's something that has come up particularly right in the last year, as suddenly everyone is an online learner and everyone is an online teacher. We have this huge swath of users who did not exist before, right? And so I sort of can't wait to see what happens when the dust settles in 4 years, 5 years, because this has been a constant topic, right? The deficiency of social interaction in online learning. It's a problem that we've been trying to address since mailing distance learning packages, right? And so really what I would like to talk about, what I had hoped at the start of this redesign of the ETL program was Commons in a Box Open Lab. So this is a quotation with page. I'll put maybe from here. Yes, that's the easiest way to do it. Okay. Oh, shortcut. Sorry, I'm just going to put this in the chat so that you can access it if you like. Too many screens. A little clunky. Sorry, there's that link if you want to check it out. CBOX Open Lab provides a powerful and flexible open alternative to costly proprietary educational platforms, allowing individual faculty members, departments, and entire institutions to easily set up an online community space designed for open learning. Sounds amazing, right? Sounds like all of your dreams are answered. Not exactly how it worked, but it does do a lot of the things. And I think the CUNY Commons, I was at in last October at OER conference, and there were some excellent example of people using different CUNY Commons to host open educational resources. And so it's neat to see people are using those platforms. But so what does it do, right? What does it do? This platform, offers the ability to host and integrate blogs, which they call e-portfolios, while sharing student activities in real time through, they call it a social feed. And the social feed was what we really thought would solve the problem. We not only did it bring it in within one platform, but that the social feed, the idea was that you would be able to see anytime a student commented or put up a new blog post or did anything on the blog or in the discussion area, on the front page, you would be able to see that. And so it looks sort of like, this is a screenshot. This is I'll put this in the chat as well. You can have a look at what we created. Yeah, let's do it from the browser. Hang on, I'll share that with you in a second. I'm having a lot of issues. So this social feed, and this is it, is meant to improve communication and presence by automating some of the mundane class interactions which would otherwise fall to students and teachers, right? And our hope was that this automation would allow users to spend more time, instructors spend more time analyzing, evaluating, creating, and less times at administrative conversations, sort of like you hope every piece of technology will do, and then it doesn't. And so this is sort of this interactive home page. And so it would tell you who's online. It has links to the portfolios, which are the blogs. It has people's profiles here. And then what's happening is that social feed that we were looking forward to, right? So this person commented on the e-portfolio in this group. This person commented on this other piece. They commented on assignment 3, another comment on assignment 3. So I guess that's what they were working on at the time. And so the hope was that this would be really useful in not only the instructor would know when things were done, but the students would as well. And I'll get into that, but it doesn't work as well as maybe we had once hoped. So as I said, the platform does allow us to host a suite of 5 courses within a single space. It links the e-portfolios, the blogs, and crucially provides a social feed. So when we're evaluating the platform, deciding whether to adopt this tool, again, the social feed was the most attractive feature, right? So the problem, that feed, I'll go back to the screenshot. That feed sits on the homepage, which is great, except for that it hosts 5 courses. And so each course has its own homepage. It doesn't sit here, and students generally take one course at a time. So once they're in it, they don't go back to that homepage, right? So it's just not in the right space to be effective. The other problem is that this only shows the last 10 actions. You can't scroll down farther to see a history. So that's a little problematic as well. 5 courses in the program, students take one at a time, and the feed includes everything from all 5 courses. So it might not necessarily might be a wider community than students want to interact with. And I will here, I'm just going to put in 1-minute warning. Okay. Sorry, if you want to have that didn't, sorry, I typo. So it also has a discussion forum that formats well, and according to instructors, the discussion space works well. It's open in terms of privacy. Users can set their portfolios to be password protected. They can be completely open, or they can be just available to the EDDL community, which is excellent. So it isn't perfect, but it's the type of space I think most programs should live in. And as well, I do want to say, just because I'm out of time, I had more to say, but I would like to say that give thanks to two of the instructors in the course, Michelle Harrison, who I spoke to, and Keith Webster, as I was putting this together. And Michelle Harrison is actually in the midst of doing some research about open. I don't see Stephen's chat post.
So Stephen, maybe I can ask you to share all of the links that you shared with us in your presentation. And we're going to move on to our second presenter. As a saving grace, I can leave the room open for you all at the end of the session, so they can take advantage, all our attendees can take advantage of your knowledge. But if you can stop your share, I'm going to be moving over to Agnieszka Palalas.
Right. I sent links to Chris, so I'll fix that and make them to everyone. Cheers.
Thank you. So I'd like to introduce now Agnieszka Palalas, also known as Aga Palalas, from Athabasca University. Stephen, if you can just stop your share so we can share the and pass it over to Agnieszka. Great, thank you. So Agnieszka, otherwise known as Aga, will be here talking to us to exploring contemplative pedagogical practices for teaching online and higher education courses. Over to you, Aga.
Thank you very much, Barbara. Thank you, Stephen, for your presentation. And I should once again remind everybody here that I am representing Athabasca University and research that has been funded by us, Athabasca University. What I'm sharing with you in a very, very short form is a result of 3 formal studies that were funded by ARF at Athabasca, and continued studies that I've done on my own within the field of contemplative pedagogy and mindfulness and mindfulness-based strategies for teachers and learners within the online and digital education. Just in a form of introduction, maybe a couple of notions that I should spend 2-3 minutes on, starting with what contemplation is and what contemplative practice is considered to be. Contemplation is really understood as a way of knowing that includes the natural human capacity for knowing, knowing through going inward, through silence, and connecting within your own wisdom, knowing, knowledge, that it really has been connected or has been collected consciously and subconsciously. So in some cultures, as you might have heard, referred to also as blood knowledge, that knowledge collected within you for centuries and generations. But that's beyond that as well. So contemplation does quiet your mind and really provides the special space, the quietude within what is a world full of distractions. And in the environment that I've been working in, those distractions are very often digital distractions in all its various forms. So in contemplation, we are able to really go deep as a whole person into our awareness. Through the concentration, we can discern our own insights that are those that have been created thanks to our coexistence and co-learning with others. And it's really also considered as a thinking through practice, a practice of reflection, a practice of reflection by going in. Contemplative practices of various types are exemplified here in the tree of contemplative practices. So you can have a quick look at what is considered contemplation and contemplative practices, right? It could be journaling, reflecting, visualization, walk in the park, prayer, centering practices, breathing practices, etc. In terms of what we understand as contemplative pedagogies, well, these are those pedagogies that really are underpinned by contemplation, right? And the belief into students' inner awareness and presence that can be achieved through contemplation and contemplative practices. Contemplative process is a critical first-person way of closely observing your own experience and verifying the knowledge that comes up for you, and really comparing it and reflecting on the knowledge that is offered to us from the outside world. It restores and nurtures our wholeness and learning. What we mean by that, the learner is considered as a whole person, not just the cognitive part of the learner. So we do, according to contemplative pedagogy, we can feel our understanding or misunderstanding, our confusion, our knowing in our body, for example, through all kinds of sensations, right? So that wholeness helps enrich students' relationship with the world that we connect with, and the whole, we really rely on these practices, not only on our insider knowledge and our within knowledge, but on our relationships with others. And by others, we mean the whole world around us. So the relationships and the interconnectedness of all life. And all of that beautiful, I guess, setting in the midst of digital craziness, right? I've actually do a lot of research in digital wellness. Not going to share these results here with you, but I thought it would be important to signal that we have to consider in this conversation the various benefits and I guess challenges of the digital context and digital fatigue that we've been experiencing to various degrees and hearing a lot about lately. When in my research studies I've spoken to online students, and approach them with a question of what challenges they find in the online learning environment and how online courses are designed and experienced. Some of the key challenges that the students across 3 different studies would mention can be summarized in these main points here. Time pressures, feeling that the learning is really fast-paced and doesn't allow time to think and go deep. Feeling that there is absolutely no time off. It's just ticking off things and moving on to the next thing again, without spending time on, for example, reflection and internalizing the understanding or the new meaning that you are just invited to add to your own repertoire and your own understanding of things. They feel that students feel that they're expected to work 24/7. When you speak to the teachers, instructors, that's not necessarily what they have in mind. The designers of learning don't have that in mind, but the result is understood on the other end by learners as expectation to work around the clock. They feel that they're in the space that's very information intensive. Many courses they consider have too many materials that are just slapped together, oops, and that don't necessarily lead to deep learning. Sometimes one or two too many readings that we don't spend enough time on. Related to that, students would feel under information overload and feel that that information is very often fragmented, that the links between the different pieces are not that obvious to them in their learning journey. They feel and definitely experience distraction, an urge or demand, external demand to multitask, to stay current. Sense of that sense of overload, information overload, work overload, demand overload, just leads to confusion. Again, there is just no time in between to pause. There were comments about technology being misused and sometimes unnecessarily, technology unnecessarily complicating things. So digital tools being used just as a showcase of, you know, the various tools as opposed to for the purpose. Sometimes simple tools for the right purpose, the right tool for the right purpose is the way to go. Actually, usually that's what it is, right? So in the technology misuse, they also felt there was a lot of technology used for, you know, very apersonal conversations, completing of tasks, but not enough for building presence and connection between the students. Connection not only within their own group, but also with instructors and other supports. Overall feeling the stress of being always on, and that would lead to confusion and self-efficacy at a really low level. So as a result of the feedback gathered, as well as research, excuse me, informed exploration, I would say, I pulled out a few main themes in terms of cognitive consequences of a situation like that. And these are, as you heard, feeling digitally overwhelmed and being digitally overwhelmed. With information overload, with distraction and chronic distractibility. So the constant distraction, the constant overwhelm does lead to forming new habits, new digital habits. And unfortunate habits are those of chronic distractibility. So our need to constantly check our messages on this device, that device, jumping in between them, trying to multitask, which is often referred to as continuous partial attention. So instead of focusing on one thing and focusing well on it, it's really the constant fragmented attention of us jumping from one thing onto another, as Stone says, trying to deal with everything at the same time, while really not being able to deal with any of them in depth. Our brain is not capable of multitasking. Yes, there are certain tasks that we can perform simultaneously, like walking and talking, but we cannot be listening and speaking at the same time. That has to be really considered seriously. Multitasking is a misnomer. Our brain does task switching. Okay, all of that leading to significant levels of anxiety, stress, and even depression, as you would see in the current literature, especially the literature of the last year. That is already looking into the mental health issues. Other consequences that have to be taken in considerations, though, there's, the design of technologies, our information-seeking habits, physical consequences of us spending too much time in front of computers and small screens. And as we said, that has many implications for our health. I have 4 minutes to go, so that what do I do with all that information? Well, I've designed for the students activities and the context, the online context in which they can practice their awareness and attention, as well as attention literacy. Attention literacy really being that understanding of one of the digital literacies right now, considered, you know, that in a couple of articles that are coming out right now, and I'm one of the co-authors of them. The attention literacy being very important for us so that we can choose, we can make a decision where we want to put our attention on, and why and when we want to put our attention on that. So being very purposeful, but before you are purposeful and you can be the real agent of your online learning or digital learning, and you are ready to make your choices, you have to really develop that mindfulness or mental habit, mental muscle, right? The brain muscle, so that you are able to focus in here and now what it is that you want to focus on. Thus, mindfulness has been built into the courses that I've worked with. The awareness, mindfulness being the awareness of what emerges in front of us right here, right now, in the present moment, without being judgmental about it. So really focusing on the experience in front of you with full awareness, with regulation of attention in such a way that you can make decisions of what you want to be reading, for how long, with that, you know, with this choice available to you to ignore everything else, right? And it's very important to be doing, approaching this behavior with curiosity, openness, and acceptance of various experiences, being either positive or negative, various opinions, various stimuli and information coming in. I should mention that we've seen what really is the biggest need of the human being in learning. Many of our, oops, that means 5 more minutes. Yeah, literature reminds us that what the basic human needs of the human and the learner are. So here we go. I put a big question mark on the internet here. And in my studies, I never forget to look through the positive lens as well. So I've mentioned all the various challenges to you, but I've really, in designing the space and the practices for the students, I always look through the theory of well-being, and making sure that the students are engaged, that we build relationships, full meaning in learning and its experience, that we focus on and build positive emotions and appreciate each other's achievements and our own too. I also very much work with Digital Wellness Collective, and I wanted to share with you a framework that has been put together and reminds us of us learners and teachers being a whole person, and always considering in our design of learning the various aspects of who we are. And here are examples of practices that practices, mindfulness-based contemplative practices that I've built into the courses over the years. And generally speaking, contemplative pedagogy is the base of it. The pedagogy combined together with community of inquiry framework, right? That does ask, you know, really support us and encourages the learner to reflect and go deep. The context in which that all is done, the community that we build together has to be, first of all, safe, non-threatening, and empowering, both in its synchronous and asynchronous version. So rushing your students in, you know, through a 45-minute session where we have to fit all that much in it might not be really the approach we want to be taking. We do include a lot of dialogue. We focus on the process as opposed to the product, believing the process well executed process leads to good product. The feedback that's presented is mindful, based on inquiry and questions and dialogue. Time and space boundaries are negotiated with students. An example being that my students are never expected to send anything to me on weekends, and vice versa. But that's negotiated. For example, with the group I'm working with right now, and usually that's the case, we agreed that Sundays are our sacred space and nobody is expected to, can choose to, but it's not expected to be in front of the computer answering emails. There are lots of practices of focusing attention on intention, with setting intentions, talking about intentions. Why are you here in this session today? Let's talk about it. Has your intention changed, right? That intention could be just simply, let's spend time together. I don't want to learn anything today. I just want to be here with you today for 15 minutes. Self-awareness and reflection practices that have been built in are those of journaling, and also journaling on mind and digital habits. Self-inquiry and introspection, talking openly and not always openly, debriefing about aha moments. Centering practices, breathing practices, arriving practices, meditation are always done together for those that opt to participate in those. And we even dance together in our classes. Embodied practice is very important. And these are synchronous classes as well as exchange of all kinds of artifacts that encourage this type of practice offline. And finally, connection with others through mindful through mindful speaking and listening, messages of support, gratitude, and compassion. And when I talk about mindful speaking and listening, these are actual practices, step-by-step, designed and practiced in a group. And finally, the benefits that have been identified by students from the benefits being a result of these practices would be mainly the three top. Attention awareness strategies were selected as the most important ones, reflection strategies, and then self-regulation ones. Respondents also recommended more time spent on mindfulness strategies, explicit instruction on mindfulness, more resources, more time built in for self-practice. So I guess encouragement for self-practice, and integrating this type of practices. Thank you, 1 minute. Earlier on, that was, I introduced them in those mindfulness practices in a course that's towards the end of our Masters of Education program, and students were hoping to start with these practices earlier on in the program. And finally, just a few notes. More benefits reported by students: awareness of their own mobile and online habits, being on autopilot all the time, awareness of attentional choices, really learning a lot. Attention literacy was important to them, developing coping mechanisms, step by step. Really, we work, what I'm talking to you right now is a 10-week course of develop currently. So really trying to go very quickly, like a drive-through thingy. And basically they have appreciated the need to slow down in order to get to the higher levels of focus and lower the time demands on themselves, and managing time much better. So open to comments, questions. Thank you for this space.
Thank you very much, Agnieszka. And the chat will be open until the end of the session. But I would like to now introduce our next speaker, who is Alicia Condell from Concordia University. And she will speak to us about student perspectives of the most effective and engaging online learning activities in a graduate seminar. Over to you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Barbara, and to the other speakers. So I'm here today to talk a little bit about some research and some feedback I got from students. But first, I really would like to just acknowledge that I'm in Montreal, or Tiohtià:ke, which is unceded Indigenous lands. And in fact, Tiohtià:ke has been known historically as a meeting place for different kinds of people. So it's very fitting that we're all meeting online today from different parts of the country and perhaps even the world, I'm not sure. And the Kanien'kehá:ka Nation is recognized as the official custodians of Tiohtià:ke. So, so I did a study on a graduate course that I was teaching. And the reason I did this is because it was originally a face-to-face course and we were moving to blended learning. And as I was doing research, I wanted to design really effective activities, but I found a lot of lacking materials on activity design, a lot of lacking research. There was a lot of research that talked about courses in general. Be sure to have social presence, be sure to have lots of teacher presence, cognitive presence, et cetera, et cetera. But there wasn't very much that spoke specifically to activity design. So, I began and I did research and I found examples of different kinds of activities. And then I began to ask my students about how they found elements of the course. And so my main questions were, what kinds of activities do students find most engaging, and which do they find most effective for their learning? And I put a link down to the research paper down at the bottom. So just to give you a background on the course, it's a 35-hour intensive course, so it is quite a lot. It's a very normally intense, and I'll show you the different formats in a moment that we offered. It is for graduate students, but also open to postgraduates or recently graduated students. It's a not for credit course. So it's not a full-blown credit course, but they do get a certificate at the end. And many of them use these to apply for teaching jobs or to become TAs or to teach in their departments as part of their graduate work. And so the different formats that we have for the course, so it started out as a fully face-to-face course. And so traditionally it's actually 7 hours to 8 hours a day, 5 days in a row. And I never taught it like that. I prefer to spread it out. So we went to 1 day a week over 5 weeks. And then when I moved to blended, I decided to do 1 day per week in class, but instead of doing the full 7 hours, we did 4 hours a day. And then the rest of the coursework was asynchronous on Moodle. And then, so since writing and researching the article and submitting my article for the conference, we went into pandemic mode, and we've now switched to online. So I do have some online data that I can share with you about the experience of students in a fully online course. And so in the online, because it was already quite an intensive course, and normally it was 7 contact hours per day, I didn't really want to go above 90 minutes on Zoom. So I decided to do 2 days per week on Zoom of 90 minutes. So that's 3 hours of face-to-face synchronous contact, and then I increased the asynchronous time to 4 hours. So today we're really talking about the two contexts of blended and online. So just to give you just a very quick recap of the data. So the research was spread over three sections of the course in spring to winter of 2018. And I had a fairly good response rate from my students, almost 80%. So the kinds of courses, the kinds of activities that were in the course varied. So for the asynchronous, so that was mostly blend. So that was in the blended and the online. I did lectures, and some of those were interactive lectures using tools like Edpuzzle, and eventually I used Perusal for that. So we did readings, and eventually when I moved to 100% online based on feedback from the research, I used Perusal for more engaged reading and social reading. I use discussion forums a lot. I use them for peer review, for reading reactions, for debates, and for scenarios. I did some quizzes, and we also did some collaborative document creation, which we did using Google Docs or some other kind of collaborative documentation. And on Zoom, so for the online portion of the course, it was mostly interactive mini lectures with group work, so breakout rooms. However, I did add a lot of interactive features, as I mentioned. So polling was a big one, chat was a big one, and annotations was a big one. So thinking right now about just the asynchronous activities. So lectures, readings, discussion forums, quizzes. Which do you think students rated most engaging? So just put their thoughts in the chat box now. Which of those do you think students found most engaging? Okay, so we see lots of ideas coming out. I'm going to show you the, the results in just a minute. So this is just a screenshot of the questionnaire. And so basically for every single activity in my blended course, which was the asynchronous course, I listed each activity and then I asked them 4 questions. So the activity helped me achieve the learning outcomes. The activity helped me achieve deeper learning. This activity was engaging, and this activity was a valuable part of the course overall. And I asked them to rate each one of the 5. I know that there's a lot of metrics for engagement. So I just came out and said, hey, did you find this engaging? And so here are the results for the top 5. The top 5 activities. Oops. Just going to expand the screen share. So hopefully you can see that. Okay, so the top one, and it was very surprising to me, and it may be very surprising to others, that the top 2 assignments were actually peer review activities. And I used the forum for these. For all the moaning that students do about it, it's very clear that they actually really value peer review. Because it helps them get a better grade. So all the peer review activities that I did they did peer review before they submitted something for grading. And the other ones were also forums, and they were related to something authentic that they had created themselves. Or the next one was the contentious topics debate that I did in the forum, which is a debate style. And I'll show you an example of that in a moment. So those were the top ones. So they were all forums. And can you guess which ones were rated the least engaging out of all the asynchronous activities? I'll just put the main, the activity list back up there. So we have readings, lectures, quizzes, a collaborative document creation. Yeah, so somebody's saying quizzes, lectures, readings. Yeah, so you're all pretty much right there. The quizzes and the readings all plummeted to the bottom. But I just want to note though, overall, so the middle, so the first number is the engagement median, which is a rating out of 5. And the median overall is the sum of all 4 medians. So out of a possible 20. So, so some of these weren't, when you look at them overall, they were fairly good scores, but when you think of them all together, they were definitely the least engaging for students. And so when I saw all the readings go to the bottom, which is what I expected, I later introduced Peruso, which is a social reading tool, an engagement tool for reading into later classes. So thinking about those top discussion forums, those top activities being all discussion forums, you know, it's important to note that not all discussion forums are created equal, because if we look at one of these here, one of the activities here was to read an article and write a summary in a discussion forum, and that didn't rate very highly. So after analyzing all of the activities that were really high rated, I came up with basically 4 criteria for a really well-developed activity. So the first would be to promote learner-learner interaction and learner content. And notice that there's no learner-teacher interaction here. It's not essential. The teacher interaction comes from the good design, right? And the follow-up. But it's not necessarily a hands-on type of activity. So promoting feedback on their ideas of work. So an activity that lets them get feedback on their own work or their own ideas makes a good activity. Promoting an activity that helps them promote higher order thinking. And I'm thinking specifically of the top 2 levels of Bloom. and providing personalization of tasks. So allowing them to get a little bit messy and think about how the task or the assignment or the question relates to themselves and use their own experience and knowledge. So those were the 4 basic things after analyzing that I came up with as really good guidelines for design activity. So I'll just show you an example. A lot of people ask me about how I set up some of my forums. So this is an example of the contentious topics or the debate that I do. So this is a course on teaching. It's a graduate course on teaching. And so I got this idea from somewhere online. I think it might have been Joanna Dunlap, but I don't have the source for it. So basically, I just pre-populated a forum with, it looks like I've got 7 statements. And they should be contentious. People should either be really strongly for or against. And then I asked students to choose one that they strongly agree with, one that they, strongly disagree with, and to justify their opinions. And so in this way, they were able to choose what they really felt strongly about, but also they were able to see the other side of the coin, right? So at the end of the week, they had to go through and read what the other students had said and reflect on it, whether or not the other students made good points or if they had changed their mind. So this was one of the top 5 activities. And I've used this sort of activity using scenarios and problem solving also. So it's a very effective way of getting students involved and getting them to personalize. They can choose what they want to attack, and they can use their own experience when they talk about debates or scenarios. So just as a wrap up for that section, because I can see I'm running very quickly at a time, there were some things that people mentioned from the blended course that were particularly good and things that weren't so great, but mostly people liked the discussions, the online discussions, and the flexibility of being blended. And then of course we see people didn't like the readings, which is why I later started using Perusal. So I just want to talk a little bit about how I used Zoom when I went fully online. So I used the basic structure of the blended course, all the same asynchronous activities, plus an added layer of Zoom. And so the last 2 sections of the course, so there's 46 respondents and I had 100% response rate for these. They were unofficial, just surveys to check and see for my own professional development to see how the course was going. And so I'm going to ask what you might think. So I asked students, what do you think, how do you feel about the length of the Zoom sessions? So they were 90 minutes. So I'm going to ask you now to throw it in the chat. What do you think students said? Do you think that 90 minutes is too long? Is it perfect or is it too short? Any guesses? Yeah, we did occasionally have a break, but I was actually overwhelmed, or I was actually surprised that overwhelmingly, most of the students felt that it was the perfect amount of time. I had 1 or 2 students who said it was too short, and some that said it was too long. So that was pretty good. Now, keeping in mind that this was traditionally meant to be a 7-hour contact per week. So I really cut it down, and I really didn't want to do 3 hours a day on Zoom. So that was really helpful. And then I decided to ask students, okay, let's think about Zoom. What are the, what are the most, what features do you like best about Zoom? Chat, annotation, polls, or breakout rooms? Which do you think was more effective? What do you think students said about Zoom? And I see I only have 1 minute left, so go ahead and put your predictions in the box. So I'm going to tell you, many of them were very popular. They were allowed to choose more than one, but the breakout rooms and the polls were the most effective. And so I'll just show you very briefly, because I used annotations a lot, and my main goal was really for students, because of the camera issue and the privacy issue, many students didn't want to go on and speak. So I tried as much to use the chat and annotations to get students to participate. So for example, I used annotations. Every student had a number in a box, and they were able to brainstorm on the screen using the Zoom annotation. I used that for a minute paper, and I also used it for brainstorming. So students had their little box and they could do whatever they wanted in their box. I used it for check-ins, for all kinds of different things. And then in the breakout rooms, I used Google Sheets. I used to use Google Docs, but as a result of too many documents, I decided one Google Sheet with multiple tabs. The students know one link every week. They go to this one document, and there's a new tab every week for the tasks in the breakout room. So I see that I've run out of time. I will put a link. Actually, I'm going to put a link to the slides in the chat box, so you can have a look at the other slides if you're interested, and I will put them on the link on the presentation page. But thank you very much. I know that everybody has other sessions to get to, but feel free to get in touch with me if you have questions.
Thank you very much, Alicia, and thank you everyone for participating today.